everyone, Christina here with Sheridan Art and Designs, and today I want to talk a little bit about how you can quickly modify a pattern to have either a lining or a facing. So before we modify our pattern, I want to talk a little bit about what's the difference between a lining and a facing. So a facing is a small strip that goes just on the inside of a garment opening. It can go on a vest or a jacket, things like that. So if you look here, you can see that this is a facing. It's just this few inches on the very inside of the opening of this vest. Now a facing can act as sort of a faux lining. So instead of having to line the whole garment, you just place that strip right on the inside, and then on things like lapels or collars, it looks like you lined it without actually having to do the work of lining the whole garment. Now, aside from a facing being a little bit faster and easier, it can also remove some of the weight from a garment. So if you have a garment that is fully lined, but you are going to be wearing a lot of layers or it makes it really hot, you can do a facing instead, and then you would remove some of that weight. You would remove the extra layer of that lining. Now, I like to use facings on garments that I know are going to be worn closed, because then there's less chance of it flying open and someone seeing just the facing and not seeing, you know, that it's unlined, right? So I tend to use them on garments that if I know I'm going to have a model that's wearing a lot of layers, you can deduct some by doing a facing. And if I know it's going to be closed, there's no reason to line the whole thing if you don't want to. Now, the benefits of a lining, as you can see on the coat here, is that it does make the garment look a little bit more posh and put together. It makes it look a little more finished. However, it does add that extra layer. But the lining has the added benefit of hiding the construction of the inside of the jacket. So if you had to add things to your jacket or vest like interfacing, horsehair canvassing, interior pockets, things like that, all of that would be hidden by the lining. So if someone sees the inside of your coat, it would look very nice without having to go in and do all of that finish work. You could just line it. So I'm going to show you how to quickly make a lining and quickly make a facing if your pattern has the opposite of the one you want, and then we'll talk through a few other options of lining. So the first thing you want to do if you want a lining but your pattern didn't come with it, you just take your front piece of your pattern like this. You take the front, the back, and if there's side pieces, take your side pieces and your sleeve. And essentially you're just going to cut those same pieces out of your lining fabric. And then you're going to follow the same instructions. So you're going to put together your outside of your jacket, and then you're going to do the same thing again, making a separate piece out of the lining pieces, right? So essentially before you put them together, you're going to have a coat out of your coat material, and then you're going to have a coat out of your lining material, and it'll be two separate pieces that you've put together. And then what you're going to do is put your coat and your lining right sides together, and you're going to sew from your bottom hem up the front all the way around the collar, down the other side, and then you can also do the hem at the same time. Now, if you'll know that like the jacket is, to put them right sides together, you have to turn the jacket inside out. So after you've stitched it, you're going to want to have an opening on the side seam of your lining, just the lining, not the coat. You'll have an opening there, and then you're going to stick your hand in there and pull the coat right side out. It sounds funky, but once you walk through it, it'll make sense. But you want to leave that little bit of opening, just like 6 to 8 inches, nothing huge. And depending on the puffiness of the garment that you're making, that opening can be bigger or smaller. But once you turn your jacket right side out, you're just going to go in and stitch that opening closed, and then you have a fully lined garment without having to change anything on the pattern, right? So you're just using those same pattern pieces, you're just cutting additional pieces out. So you take all those same pieces, cut them out of your lining, and then if you use this method, that's called the bag method, and it's the fastest, easiest way to make a lining. Now let's say that your garment came with a lining and its instructions say use this lining, but you decide for various reasons that you instead want to just do the facing. You don't want to line the whole garment. You'll have to make a facing piece for that. So this is what a finished facing piece looks like. And to make one of these is very simple. All you need is the front piece of your pattern. So this piece that you used before to cut the front piece of your pattern out. And all you're gonna do is you're gonna lay it out on your table, take some tissue, tracing paper, whatever you have, and lay it over the top. And starting at the center front of your pattern piece, you're gonna trace that whole line. So you're gonna start by tracing the whole center front, you're gonna trace the neckline curve, and then you're gonna come over into the shoulder seam 2.5 inches, give yourself a few inches. You can see that that's this chunk here, right? So we came up our center front, we traced that neck curve, and then we came into the shoulder seam about 2.5 inches, right? So then what you're going to do after you have that line in, I like to start at the bottom because it's usually straighter instead of starting at that shoulder seam. You come down to the bottom where you traced your center front, and then you come over across the bottom about 3 inches, right? So on this finished piece, center front, and then we came across the bottom hem about 3 inches. And then you're just gonna draw a straight line all the way back up towards the neck curve, right? Straight line, but then you'll notice that 2 inches on the shoulder seam, it's gonna create a bit of a curve, and that's okay. You just wanna have a nice gentle curve. So find a spot on your pattern. I use this notch usually if there's a nice notch in the front of the pattern. It's just a visual aid so that you can create a curve. If there is no notch, just come up the side as far as you can before you're gonna start making a really exaggerated curve. You just wanna keep this pretty gentle. So just find that spot on the shoulder that you made and then come all the way down, gentle curve, and then straight all the way down. And that would be your facing piece. You wanna make sure that you translate a lot of the markings from your front to your facing piece as well. So if there's any notches like where a lapel would go or something like that, make sure that you put that there, and make sure that you trace your grain lines onto your facing piece too. Remember, grain lines are worth it. Watch our video. And the grain line on a facing piece will run the exact same way as the grain line on the front piece. So you just have to translate that over. It should run probably the length of the front piece. So just make sure that you translate that over, and you can see these like 2 lines here. That's where you would lengthen or shorten. So any modifications you make to that front piece as far as length goes, you're gonna make to this facing piece as well. And that's how you quickly make a facing piece. Then you're gonna cut 2 of these out along with all of your other pattern pieces, because you need one right and one left. You'll cut them out along with all your other pieces. And then when you're putting your garment together, all you're gonna do is stitch this facing piece to your center front piece, just along with all of your other long seams that you're doing. So your side seam, sewing your front to your back, that kind of thing. You'll just stitch your facing on, and then you're just gonna press it towards the inside, right? And then that creates a nice lapel and a nice front, so that you can see it looks like it's fully lined, but when it's closed, no one will know that you skipped the lining. That can make this garment a lot faster to make without having to do the full lining. Now there is a halfway in between option that you can do. If you don't want to line the full piece, but you think that some of it needs lining and a facing just isn't gonna cut it, it's just not quite as quick. So the bag method of lining that we did on here is the quickest, easiest way to line a garment. But if you see over here on this vest, we lined only sections of it, right? So these side pieces aren't lined, but the front and back pieces are. And to do that, we did what we call flat lining. Flat lining is when you cut out your lining piece and you cut out your front piece and you baste them together and you treat them as one piece when you're constructing. Now the benefits of that is that you get this really nicely lined piece that doesn't have a lot of gapping in it, whereas the bagging, you can get a little bit of give in between those layers, right? But the cons of doing flat lining is that you do have to still do all that finish work that we were hiding with this lining, right? So you're gonna have to finish your seams and anything like that if you want it to look really good on the inside. So that way you can see we came in here and we finished our seams in the transition, right? So you don't see a raw edge here. Now, there are many different options on how to finish your hem or finish your seams on the inside, and we made a video with all your options and walking you through how to do each. I'll link it up here for you. But this is your third option. It just takes a little more finish work. All right, guys, I hope that helped you kind of decipher facings versus linings and showed you how to quickly change between each. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.